So we are now recording. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us as part of VSTE's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion webinar series. And if you know of anyone who is unable to join us at this time, please let them know that this webinar is being recorded and will be placed on VSTE's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion webinar YouTube channel. My name is Nicci Dowd, and I serve as one of VSTE's Board of Directors and the co-chair of VSTE's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And I am beyond thrilled to have the pleasure of introducing our guest presenter today, Dr. Penny Sweetenburg-Lee. I consider her a mentor, and she is just a phenomenal individual. She has a dynamic bio, and I don't want to take up too much time reading it because I want to devote as much time as we have to hearing from Dr. Penny. Nonetheless, I do want to share some of her background with you. Dr. Sweetenburg-Lee receives international recognition as an educator, evangelist, dynamic motivational speaker, promoter, facilitator, and events planner. She is nationally recognized in the field of race relations and diversity for her scholarship in the areas of access and retention of students of color. She has been invited to present at such notable institutions as Harvard University, the University of Texas, Austin, Boston University, Boston College, Fairfield University, the University of Cincinnati, and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, to name a few. She co-authored her first book in 2003 entitled Our Stories, the Experiences of Black Professionals on Predominantly White Campuses. Today, Dr. Penny is going to share with us the work that she does in her role as the Director of Training and Alumni Development Programs for the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Dr. Penny Sweetenburg-Lee.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Dr. Dowd, and to the Virginia Society for Technology and Education, VSTE. I am so grateful and honored that you've invited me to share a little bit about what I'm privileged to do at the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. I wanted to start with perhaps my mantra, or one of my mantras. And it simply states, if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living, your living, our living shall not be in vain. I am going to share my screen because I have prepared a slide presentation to help me stay on time. And so as Dr. Dowd stated, I bring you greetings from the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. We are the Developmental Disabilities Council for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I have been privileged to serve as the Director of Training and the Alumni Development Programs for the board for the past 5 years. I have just started my 6th year on March the 10th, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful privilege to have inherited 2 flagship programs and then to be asked to birth and develop the Alumni Development Program for the agency. I am very fortunate that I have 2 exceptional staff members who help me to do the work of our unit. They are Ms. Renita Wilson, who has joined us today. She is the coordinator for the Alumni Development Program, and the Alumni Development Program, which you will hear a little bit more about, has an association, TAA, the Training Alumni Association. And then we have Miss Jasmine Gray, who is the coordinator for our Partners in Policymaking training program and the Youth Leadership Academy program. And so we are one unit within the agency. And our unit, as I've stated, is called the Training and Alumni Development Programs unit. And I am privileged to supervise, to manage, to direct, to be the visionary for the Partners in Policymaking, which is one of two flagship training programs. We affectionately call it PIP, Partners in Policymaking. And that program is approximately 28 years old. Over the last 5 years since my tenure, we have done a number of things to enhance it, to raise the bar, to set the standard. But for you to simply understand what PIP is all about, and some of you who are listening may already know, but it is a training program that is held every other year. That is, Virginia Board offers it every other year. It is normally held from September through April of the following year. It just so happens that this year, PIP will convene in September 2021, and we will go through November 2021. We will take a break in December, and we will reconnect in January through April 2022. PIP is always held at a host hotel. That hotel is contracted through the Commonwealth of Virginia. We happen to be in contract with the Holiday Inn Newport News currently. PIP is a program that requires, and what I love about my role is that I get to celebrate, to focus always on diversity. And so when we launch the marketing and the recruitment strategies and we send it out to the Commonwealth, we are always trying to make sure that we are reaching all 4 regions, that we are sending to organizations, agencies, community groups, nonprofits, and to churches, so that we might appeal and recruit diverse candidates for the program. Our applications are very competitive, and we are excited because PIP partners, and momentarily I'll share with you the other training program, but we spend a lot of time utilizing their gifts, their talents, their abilities. We hire self-advocates and alumni to help us do the work. And so not only are we training them, but we also commit to training them to be trainers. And then we also find ways to include them in our programming. The second flagship program is the Youth Leadership Academy, YLA, and the Youth Leadership Academy is also held respectively every other year. We've had some interesting times because of the pandemic. We were scheduled to offer it in July of 2020, but because of the pandemic, we had to cancel. We were not ready for the virtual rendering. And so it is actually in play now, and we're presenting and we'll be delivering YLA the week of July the 12th through the 15th. And so we're looking forward to our new YLA delegates joining us in July. The Youth Leadership Academy is always held on a college or university campus. It, of course, has to be a state public university. And for the last 3-4 years, we have been contracted with the Virginia State University. Our marketing and our recruitment, as I mentioned in the PIP discussion, is always focused on diversity. So we're looking for race and ethnicity, we're looking for gender diversity, we're looking for disability diversity, and we're looking for regional diversity. And for both programs, PIP and YLA, in my role, I have the opportunity of identifying the presenters, the facilitators, the major speakers, of hiring the YLA staffers who will work for us, and or working with the contracted agency who provides for our partners in policy making, personal care assistants, nurses, whoever we may need. And in that role, I am able to make sure that we are opening the doors, opening the gateways, providing diverse presenters and facilitators and speakers, and making sure that, if at all possible, the class, the composition of the class, so those students who are admitted to YLA, those students who are admitted to PIP, that they are celebrating the various diversities and disabilities that the Virginia Board is committed to doing through its mission. The same is true as it relates to hiring practices. And so it is important that as a state agency, we resemble and we look like the people that we serve. And so in a role as director, I have opportunities to engage in hiring. And so, of course, that is always important, that we're making sure that we are promoting, marketing, and recruiting so that we can get diverse candidates. Both PIP and YLA will be held virtually this upcoming year. And we are excited that both of them are occurring this coming year, 2021, and then PIP will run through 2022. It is an exorbitant amount of work, but we have a passionate team led by yours truly, and we will get the work done. The third program that I'd like to introduce to you is the Training Alumni Association. And the Training Alumni Association is the program that was birthed out of the Alumni Development Program. So as the director, I was hired to direct, supervise, manage PIP, Partners in Policymaking, Youth Leadership Academy, and now this Alumni Development Program. 5 years ago, it did not exist. It was my responsibility to come in, to collaborate, to partner, to work with the agency's leadership, to work with our agency's board, to work with my staff to birth, develop this formal Training Alumni Association. The Training Alumni Association's mission is to provide advocacy trainings and information sessions, kind of like what VSTE is doing. This is an informational session. So TAA, they provide advocacy trainings, information sessions, and they facilitate grassroots advocacy on behalf of who are our constituents, people with disabilities. And where do we do this work? In the Commonwealth of Virginia. And what is our purpose for doing the work? We want to impact systems change. And so this is a very powerful, very necessary, very relevant, very strong body of alumni who do this work. Now, what makes them an alumni? They have either graduated from the Partners in Policymaking training program, or they've graduated from the Youth Leadership Academy. So in order to be a part of the Training Alumni Association, one has to have graduated from Partners in Policymaking, which is a 7-month, 1 weekend per month commitment. It starts in September, October, November. We take a break in December. The PIP partners come back again in January through April. So to be a graduate of the Partners in Policy Making program is a huge commitment on behalf of either parents who have children with disabilities or self-advocates, a person with a disability. So Partners in Policy Making is our adult program that encompasses either parents who have children or the self-advocate adult. The Youth Leadership Academy is a 4-day experience, a leadership development academy, where we bring them onto a college or university campus, and we focus on 3 primary areas. Either it is personal leadership, professional leadership, or career development. And for those 4 days, these youth, they are from 10th grade to 12th grade. They are all self-advocates. We refer to them as delegates. So the Youth Leadership Academy delegates and the Partners in Policy Making PIP partners, they graduate from these programs, and then they are welcomed into the Training Alumni Association. We've been very fortunate to be able to envision the need to make sure that we were reaching all of the key regions in the Commonwealth. And so this association is divided into 4 regional chapters: Central Virginia, Northern Virginia, Southwest Virginia, and Tidewater Alumni Regional Chapter. And what's interesting about the TAA organizational structure, not only are they divided into regions, but they meet collectively as an association yearly so that they can plan their advocacy agendas, and they meet in a retreat form so that all of the regions are represented, all of the leaders are at the table, and then they come up with their advocacy agenda for the state year, which starts July 1 and will run through June 30th. Alumni agendas are coordinated by subcommittees. And so what we have found over the years of developing this program was that we needed to diversify the subcommittees. And so if the TAA leadership has decided that they wanted to deal with elections, or they wanted to deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion, it was important for me as the director, as the visionary for this program, to make sure that the subcommittees were representative of various disabilities, but also ethnic and racial groups. And we have had an extremely successful year in utilizing subcommittees to do the work that the TAA has been able to achieve this past year. The Training Alumni Association, the primary focus and goal is to partner and collaborate with other disability organizations and agencies, with other nonprofit organizations. And it's important to emphasize that simply because TAA, or the Alumni Development Program, we were not trying to reinvent the wheel. We celebrate all of the various disability organizations and agencies that are out there. So it was important for our alumni, our graduates, to partner in their regions with all of these different organizations and agencies so that they might be able to utilize their leadership and advocacy skills and their expertise to carry out the mission of the Training Alumni Association. I thought I would put a few slides in where I could share with you some of the wonderful work that the Training Alumni Association has been able to accomplish. Each year, they engage in Developmental Disabilities Days. We do it in partnership with the ARC of Virginia, and our alumni, normally they come into the capital city, Richmond, and they have scheduled meetings to meet with their legislators, either their delegates or their senators. You see some photos here. Because of the pandemic, we had to provide a different way of doing it this year, but we have found that even doing it virtually and giving our alumni choices for how they would like to interact, either they could have called and scheduled a virtual meeting one-on-one with their legislators. They could have written a letter. There were various ways in which we did not in the past identify that our alumni could engage in, but because we were forced to do things differently, to think differently, we had more engagement as a result of offering Developmental Disabilities Days virtually. We also, as I mentioned earlier, we do a yearly retreat for our alumni leaders and members at large, and we bring in various speakers to share perspectives and to help with legislative updates, and we take the time in the retreat also to develop the advocacy agendas for the year. The Training Alumni Association, again, Partners in Policy Making is a 7-month commitment. YLA is a 4-day commitment. The agency And our board, we are governed, we are supervised by a 39-member board. And that board of directors, most people will be familiar with, said to the agency leadership some 7 to 8 years ago that we needed to re-engage our alumni. Hence why I was hired, why this program was born. And as a result, we now have actively engaged alumni who have graduated either from PIP or YLA, and they're doing phenomenal work. One of which, this past 2020 in July, they celebrated the 30th anniversary of the ADA. One way, again, as the visionary, as the leader, as the director of this unit, it is incumbent upon me to always look for ways to celebrate diversity and to make sure that as many people and persons and disabilities are represented at the table. So this was an opportunity for us to really focus in on our rock stars. And during that ADA week, we identified 10 rock stars who we asked to create videos and to share their testimony, their stories, their challenge, their successes. And it was a huge hit during the week-long celebration that we did. These rock stars were not only showcased on a video or a Zoom discussion, but we also provided it on Facebook. And so you'll see where I am highlighting that some of them received 1,100 views, and I haven't checked recently, but the numbers are going up and up and up. So not only are we celebrating them, are we affirming them, but we're also providing a platform for their stories to be told and for them to be heard. And if you are looking at the photos, you will see that we have worked hard to have diversity at the table. I am excited as an African-American woman in this role to have the kind of authority and the kind of vision that understands how important it is to diversify and to make sure that diversity is included in all of my work. We brought in Attorney Stephen Gordon from the Department of Justice. So again, TAA collaborates across the board. This was a big deal for us to have the Department of Justice, Office of the U.S. Attorney, the Civil Rights Enforcement Coordinator of the Eastern District of Virginia, Esquire, meaning an attorney, Stephen Gordon, with us. And he kicked off that week-long celebration. It was Tuesday through Friday where we celebrated those rock stars. And then on Saturday of that week, we had a day of action, transportation, accessibility advocacy panel. This is when we engage legislators. And so it was so awesome and so important that we bring together this past July 2020, the chair of the Transportation Committee for the House of Delegates and for the State Senate. And so both Delegate Dolores McQuinn of the 70th District and Senator David Marsden of the 37th District, they serve respectively in their roles as chairpersons for transportation. And the alumni wanted to make sure that they heard the voices of self-advocates, persons who are struggling with transportation, persons who live in rural areas, etc. And so not only do we bring these folks in, but at an event like this, we have self-advocates speak to them. We have question and answer segments that allow them to respond because we want to know where the legislators stand on certain issues affecting persons with disabilities. We also have opportunity when we're celebrating differences and we're trying to really position individuals and appreciate and affirm folks that we have in our own possession, and we own him and we take him for ourselves, although he is a giant throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, Mr. Ed Turner. We thought it would not only be important for him to provide a keynote address at the ADA, since he was so intimately and intricately involved for 30 years and trying to get folks to understand that people with disabilities deserved everything everybody else had access to. And so he served as the keynote speaker, but we also gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award as a disability rights activist, a disability rights activist, Mr. Ed Turner, and it was delivered to him on July the 26th, 2020. We did it in collaboration with Councilwoman Salonia Miles from the town of Dumfries. And of course, our executive director of the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities is Ms. Terry Morgan. And so you'll see her signature affixed there. Councilwoman Salonia Miles happens to be a graduate of the Partners in Policymaking training program, and she also serves as the councilwoman. And in fact, if you heard her testimony, she would tell you that it was because of her experience with Partners in Policymaking that she was motivated, inspired, and led to run for office. And now she is in that position. One of the most wonderful things that occurred, I think, this year has been, and I'm saying this year, but actually 2020, 2021, unfortunately, because of the temperature of this nation, because of white supremacy, because of systemic racism, because everything has been on the table. It is very interesting that today I am speaking to you the day after the verdict has been rendered. And though we are exhaling, and though we are excited that justice has been served, people of color, as an African-American person, we are still not getting it twisted. We understand that there is still much work to be done, and anything systemic cannot disappear overnight. And so we exhale today, we celebrate that Derek Chauvin has been held accountable for literally lynching and murdering George Floyd before the nation, thanks to a video. And yet it is just a start, but we have so much further to go. One of the things that the Training Alumni Association, one of its leaders out of the Tidewater Alumni Regional Chapter, Angel Barnhill, brought to the association and to the leadership was that we need to get in this, and we need to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so they developed the DEI series, panel discussions, where they brought in some heavy hitters to address some very challenging conversations. Dr. Vivian Stith-Williams from the Department of Education, who is now retired, Ms. Cheryl Poe, Advocating for Kids, Ms. Marie Davis-Pierre from Autism in Black. Other speakers for the second session was Mr. Ronnie Sidney, who is an author. He's a therapist and a self-advocate. He's a bad brother. And we have the first in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Janice Underwood, was also a speaker, and Ms. Leah Dossier Walker, who serves as the Director, Office of Equity and Community Engagement for the Virginia Department of Education. And we had an awesome sister attorney, Grace E. Kim, from the law offices of Grace E. Kim, who is a special education attorney. And these four individuals were brought into the second panel discussion. Just recently, we concluded with the third panel discussion for this year. And I want to reiterate that when we engaged in DEI conversations and discussions, it was understood that through this unit, and certainly through the Training Alumni Association, that we could not just do a one hit it fit all and be done with it. So look for them in the future, but the last one we just held this past Friday, and it was on the intersectionality of disability and race. And Ms. Nakia Green and Ms. Emily Blum did a phenomenal job. They are experts in this area of intersectionality of disability and race, and it was a well delivered presentation, and it was also well attended. Our TAA also engages in a partnership with the ARC of Northern Virginia, and we work very closely with Lucy Bennell and they coordinate major town hall meetings. And so our alumni participated in attendance, or they attended these town hall meetings. And part of the partnership is that we will help market and recruit our alumni. I can hear someone asking, I wonder how many alumni are there? There are probably over 800 graduates of either the PIP or the YLA program. We have actively engaged probably about 200, 250 alumni. We have about 400 of them in our database with accurate information. And we celebrate that we have a large number, but we are very clear that that does not mean that all of them are active. And so we're constantly re-engaging, trying to get more of them to come back. But those who are active, they are doing the doggone thing. They're kicking butt. And so I celebrate that. They also focused this year on everything you need to know about the election process. It was an information session. And I think now that as I'm coming to a close, I would share 3 final slides with you on some questions that I thought perhaps you guys would want to know some information about. So the first question is, in my roles, have I faced biases? And I have expanded the question not to just specifically look at my role as Director of Training and Alumni Development Programs, although absolutely I have experienced biases. But in my role as a servant leader over the course of my 40+ years in the workforce, absolutely. What is bias? It is prejudice in favor of or against one thing or person or a group compared with another, usually in a way that is considered unfair. Another definition is cause to feel or show inclination or prejudice for or against someone or something. Excuse me. So as an African-American woman, have I experienced biases? Absolutely, yes. What are some of the reasons I think that biases show up in my professional career? One, because I am a very courageous, a very competent, and a very confrontational African-American professional. I try very hard to be ethical and integral. I am extremely authentic, and I know who I am. That in itself sometimes is too much for some people to handle. I have experienced biases as it relates to equity and fairness, as it relates to pay, salary, as it relates to promotions, and as it relates to having access. Sometimes they like to keep the courageous, competent, confrontational gift to agencies, to universities, to corporate settings. They like to keep them in the background because they don't want them to be exposed, and they don't want to have them celebrate and be liberated as to who they are. And so I've experienced it when it comes to access. What are some recommendations to deal with when you face biases? I have become a very keen and objective listener, because you can't always determine up front that that is what it is. And so you listen keenly and you have an open mind as you're listening. And then I embrace processing, meditating. I am a person of faith, so I embrace praying. And I pray not only for myself, I pray not only for wisdom, but I pray for the perpetrators and the initiators and the instigators of this bias that I experience and have experienced throughout my professional journey. I also confront it head on. If you're going to be the recipient of bias, then you have a right to call it out. We do it differently because we're wired differently, but confront it and always be willing to resolve it. I am a conflict resolutionist. I embrace it. And so I like to communicate, talk through it, tough conversations, but there's always a resolve, even if we agree to disagree. And find ways to educate and help others to see when bias is being inflicted upon others. What advice would I give stakeholders and educators working with historically marginalized groups? I would first say you need to engage. Tell your supervisors, your managers, folks who have supervision responsibilities over you, that training on cultural competency and diversity, equity, and inclusion needs to happen. There are organizations, there are teams who need to be exposed, who need to be educated in these two areas. And I encourage you, if you're working with these underrepresented, marginalized groups, you need to know something about being culturally competent, and you need to understand more about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I also recommend that you acknowledge the reality of history, the history of people of color, the history of African Americans, i.e. Black folks in these yet to be United States of America. I also recommend that you accept that white privilege does exist and that the dominant culture, the Anglo-Saxon, white people have the privilege. There are those who reject this notion, those who are offended by this notion, but it does exist. Recognize systemic racism. Not only recognize it, but accept it. It does. And I guess I am, as an African-American woman, always trying to educate, trying to listen, trying to be objective. But the reality is that systemic racism has been a part of the experiences of people of color since the foundation of this nation. We were never included in it. Understand the term microaggressions. These are comments or actions that subtly and unconsciously or intentionally expresses a prejudiced attitude toward a member of a marginalized group. One example I'll throw out very quickly from Jenny Spiegler talks about a digital photo project that was run by Fordham University, and a student from Fordham was responsible for running this digital photo project. And it was about racial microaggressions. It featured marginalized students who held up signs with a comment that said, and I quote, "You are really pretty for a dark-skinned girl." I'm gonna let you sit with that. That's an example of microaggressions. When you make comments or your actions, they may be unconscious, they may be subtle, or they may be intentional, but they express a prejudiced attitude toward a member of the marginalized groups. Have I experienced them? All the time, every day, in every context that I operate in. My final slide, what advice? Oh, this is continuing. What advice would I give stakeholders? So additional advice would be to recognize that you use microaggressions, that microaggressions come out of us, and we need to be able to identify them, call it what it is, and then begin to work on stopping the use of them. We need to confront our own prejudices, racism, discrimination, unfair practices. We need to become more open, to become more non-judgmental. We need to accept constructive criticism, even when it's tough to hear, even when you don't agree with it, even when you are offended by it. I use the term sit with it. When it is delivered to you from a person of color who has had to deal with this all of their professional career, and they offer you constructive criticism, sit with it. And then come back to the table and discuss it and try to find resolve. Accept differences, be authentic, and be okay with being transparent. I am an African-American woman. I am a Christian woman. I am extremely authentic, and I am very transparent. That is who I am. That is what I bring to the table. And it's okay for you to be who you are and to bring what you need to bring to the table. That does not at all negate my ability to do excellent work, to be competent, and to deliver high quality, high standard, excellent work. And then I recommend that you identify 1 to 2 people in your agency, on your team, in your organization, that you can have these candid conversations with about racism, about white supremacy, about white privilege. We are made better when we diversify our conversations and when we're talking to folks that don't look like us, but have a sensitivity and a compassion and a desire to want to learn. And then finally, how has this pandemic impacted our population, which is persons with disabilities? It has been transformative. Thank God for the Virginia Society for Technology and Education. Thank goodness for technology. It has been transformative. We have been able to increase our access to people with disabilities around the Commonwealth, throughout all of the rural areas, throughout all of our 4 regions. Our outreach has been increased, and we've been able to retain their engagement. Alumni who have not ever participated in the 4 years as we've been developing the Training Alumni Association now have access. We have been able to train and educate the workforce and our constituents exponentially because we have been able to reach them. So now the numbers of folks that we are training and educating based on what we're offering has expanded or increased. And the types of trainings and the use of trainers have also been enhanced because of these virtual renderings. And we've connected with more self-advocates. All of our work at Virginia Board is evaluated, and we spend a lot of time always making sure that we listen to what we are hearing and we respond to the constructive feedback that we receive. I see that I have gone over, but I certainly hope that my overview of the Training and Alumni Development Program, the work that I direct at the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, which is the Developmental Disabilities Council for the Commonwealth of Virginia, has been helpful, that it has been educational, that it has been informative. And I also hope and pray that my candidness, my authenticity, and my transparency as it relates to my intentionality, my intentional work to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, and my transparency that I have and I continue to experience racism, discrimination, unfair treatment, inequities, but it has not at all disturbed me to the degree where I am not willing to continue to advocate and fight for people with disabilities and to fight for marginalized groups around the Commonwealth of Virginia, but also around the nation. So thank you for this privilege and opportunity. I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
Dr. Penny, thank you so, thank you so much, Dr. Penny, for just taking this time out of your busy schedule just to educate us on the work that you're doing, just for your authenticity, just for your transparency. Thank you so much for that. Whenever I hear you speak, whenever I just get a chance to just sit under you, I always I'm motivated to do better and to be better. So thank you so much. Do we have any comments, questions? You dropped the mic on us, Dr. Penny. You dropped the mic. You dropped the mic.
Well, thank you so very much, and thank you.
Yes, Charles, good job. We had a attendee. She had to leave early, but she did say, I do want to read. Thank you for facilitating this webinar. Dr. Sweetenberg-Lee is phenomenal. I am not familiar with this organization and am inspired by her DEI work, advocacy, and attitude. I look forward to more conversations like this. She says she is going to catch the end of the recording because she did have to leave early. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And again, Dr. Dowd, thank you, and thank the Virginia Society for Technology and Education. VSTE, is it? Thank you so very much. VSTE.
VSTE, yes. Thank you. And
so
I
much.
do want to point out that I am a proud graduate of PIP. Okay.
You are, and an active member of the Training Alumni Association.
Yes,
absolutely. One of its awesome leaders.
Because of your leadership, because of the model that you are for me, you know, I feel empowered that yes, I can go out and advocate as well, you know, and be who I am, be authentic, like you're saying, be intentional about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very proud of the work that you're doing and that you're a board member of this nonprofit organization. Our partners in policymaking graduates are just all over the Commonwealth doing wonderful things. And we know that their work is not just with us, but they have been positioned for greater impact. And perhaps that is the last comment that I will make, that this work that I do, it's not work, it is not a job, it is a calling. It is my ministry offering to the God that I serve. And wherever he places me, I give and bring all of who I am. And I always try to do whatever I do in excellence. And even when I fall short, I'm so excited that my motive is always pure. And so thank you for the opportunity again.
Thank you, Dr. Penny. Okay, I am going to stop recording here.